Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast with Kevin Harrington and Seth Greene. Kevin Harrington is the inventor of the infomercial, one of the original sharks from the hit TV show Shark Tank, and has generated over $5 billion in TV and digital direct response sales. Seth Greene is the world's first trusted authority on cutting-edge direct response marketing, a best-selling author, and the only 3-time Marketer of the Year nominee. On the podcast, Kevin and Seth interview sharkpreneurs who share straight talk on what it takes to explode your business.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com. Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast. Today I've got the good fortune to be joined by Dr. Jim Schleckser of The CEO Project. He is CEO and managing partner and has extensive leadership experience with organizations in both public and private environments and across multiple industries. He's built, acquired, and led several companies, including international businesses with multiple operating business units. And he's also, I don't know how he's got the time. We're going to talk about how he's active with many nonprofit organizations. Jim, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Seth, for having me. I don't sleep much is the answer. So,
oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. So we got that out of the way. Let's go back in time a little bit. How did you get started? How did all of this come to pass?
You know, back literally when I was 13, I read Think and Grow Rich, and it just influenced me to say I want to grow a career in business. And even though I got a engineering undergraduate, I was sort of tracking towards learning how to run a business, sales, marketing, and then literally general management at 29 years old. And then I grew my career as a business leader ever since that time. So I've been through multiple different kinds of businesses with all that global experience you talked about. And it's my love. I'm good at it. I love it. I've got my 10,000 hours, enough to be, expert. So it was really from a young age. I said, business is my vibe. I love the game. I love it. And I think it's a force for good. And I enjoy doing it.
Awesome. So how did the CEO Project come to be?
As I ran various companies for other people, I was in CEO peer groups, and I found them to be remarkably useful. It's that mastermind group, going back to Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, of no agenda, smart people interested in your outcome. I got immense value out of it. And when I left my last corporate gig, I said, I looked at a variety of businesses, but this one really tickled me as intellectually stimulating, impactful, deep in business. And that's what caused me to start that business. And I've been doing it now for almost 20 years. We've got just over 125 CEOs we work with. So it's a lot of fun.
So tell us a little bit about how the CEO Project works.
So what I found out as I researched CEO effectiveness and literally interviewed thousands of CEOs is that really good ones focus on what we call the point of constraint. They don't say this, but this is what they do. So you can think of a garden hose with a kink in the hose. I'm trying to get water through the hose. There's the work to get the water to flow is only useful at one place. Find the kink, open it up. Same thing's true in your business. There's something in your business that's stopping you from achieving what you want to, profit, revenue, growth, whatever. You got to figure out where that point of constraint is and open it up. And that's what the really good CEOs do differently than the average CEOs. Most of us just kind of throw spaghetti at the wall and hope some of it sticks, not really sure which one's going to work. These CEOs are very thoughtful about figuring out what is the problem and then very intense about putting 1/3 to 40% of their time at that point of constraint. And that was the nature of my first book, Great CEOs Are Lazy. That's really the premise of the book, but it came from this research.
Well, that's a great controversial title.
Yeah.
Now I wish I had read the book. I'd have even more intelligent questions to ask. I'll make sure and go get a copy. After the interview, you mentioned working with over 100 different CEOs. So how many CEOs are in a peer group? Is this local, regional, virtual? I mean, how does all of that work?
Yeah, so we're regional. Actually, we're national, but the groups are regional. So you can either drive or fly to your meeting. The group size is 8. We find for group effectiveness, 8 is sort of the one. You've been in meetings with 12 people, 16 people. It's a gang, not a team. And 2 or 3 or 4 just isn't enough to get the intellectual flow going. So 7, 8 is perfect. We meet quarterly. In fact, I just came back from Colorado from a CEO group meeting, and we dealt with, each person brings the hardest issue that they're dealing with, the one that if they pop it open, it changes the nature of their business. And that's what the group helps them process. They try to help them problem solve, come up with ideas, how to really get after it. And sometimes, actually, there was one guy, he brought an issue around channel conflict, and the whole group basically said, yeah, we'll give you feedback on that, but you need to focus on making more money than you make. You don't make enough money for the size business you are, and that's your biggest problem. And so they literally told him, you're barking up the wrong tree. Go bark up this other tree, because that's the one that's important. So it's very direct. Nobody would have told him that. Nobody would have been honest like that. But a group of CEOs that wants you to do well, and they want the same kind of feedback, that's what the peer group does for you. All this is moderated by someone like myself, former CEO. So we're not like a therapist that knows the right questions, but we don't really know what your answer is going to be. We've actually lived what you're living and have some insight to what the problem might be.
How does this differ from, let's say, an EO or a Vistage?
Yep. So EO is, they do have a forum product, as does YPO. They are self-facilitated. I mean, when one of the members sort of takes a little training and they try to, they don't have a theoretical model, this concept of theory of constraint. They sort of bring whatever's on your mind. And the joke is, self-facilitated is non-facilitated. It's the difference between going to the gym and just working out with some buddies versus getting a trainer, right? And you get different results. And that's why we think a facilitator is critical. Versus Vistage, they tend to focus on somewhat smaller companies. Not a big proportion of their clients are below $20 million of revenue, and they're heterogeneous. So they'll put a $200 million company with a $10 million company, and you've been around the block. The problems of a $200 million company couldn't be more different than the problems of a $10 million company. We don't do that. We bring the groups of like size, like complexity. So my issue, Seth, looks like your issue. You're like, oh, geez, I solved that problem last year. Let me help you with that, right? Or I love what Jim's doing, and I have that same problem, and I didn't even realize it till he started talking about it. So they experience their journey together in a much more important way, much more significant way than a heterogeneous group would. So homogeneity and size would be the 2 differences from Vistage.
That makes a lot of sense. Have
Yep.
you done any, you've been doing at this a while, have you seen the difference in kind of the results that the CEOs are getting your way versus something else?
Yeah, the data we've gotten on it, and we've analyzed, hundreds of CEOs we worked with, they generally have growth rates 2 to 3 times the market, and they have profitability at 2 to 3 times the market. And I'm not sure, I would love to take credit for all of that, right? But I think it's more about the nature of an individual that says, I don't have all the answers and I'm seeking better solutions. They may do just as well no matter what methodology they use. We happen to like peer groups, but they get very, very significantly different and better results than the average. And so we think it works. But again, it could be a selection thing. Like they just happen to people that would have done well anyway, but they do well with us, certainly.
And do you have, what are some of the most common issues? How do I as a CEO know that this is something that I need?
Yeah. So a couple of the more popular issues that we run into is holding an executive team accountable and or growing the competency of the executive team, particularly if you're growing your business rapidly. The people that brought you to 10 or $20 million, more likely than not, are not the people to bring you to $100 million. They get different skill sets, different competency. We've got one member, the business was grown, very homegrown talent to, $160, $70 million. Well, their plan is to go to 500 and then $1 billion. And these people are hanging on for dear life as leaders. They're not the people that can drive the business to the next level. So he's got to change out his management team. That's a really typical growth problem that we run into. Is I love these people. Seth was my roommate in college. He trusted me in the early days when I had nothing. And now I'm going to tell him he doesn't have a job. Like, that's painful stuff. Always, people don't have enough revenue. They're like, how do I get more revenue? How do I grow faster? And that's either the talent I have around the sales problem or the marketing problem, or the methodology I'm using needs to be different, or the offer needs to be different. And we help them with all of those kinds of things. And maybe the third, particularly as you grow, a lot of CEOs get stuck in a job, meaning if I'm a really good salesperson, even as the business scales, in fact, we have one woman that we were just dealing with. She's running a $500 million company and she still is the number one salesperson. And you go, so I got a question. When you're being number one salesperson, who's being the CEO? And they go, well, yeah, maybe nobody. Aha, exactly. So that's the problem. You get stuck in a role and the company basically loses their CEO while you're out doing the thing you love that you're great at. But the job is different when you get to scale. And so we help them figure that out and bring the right talent in so they're comfortable releasing that particular function.
That makes a lot of sense. How, if you mentioned that 8, I think, was the optimal group size, then you've got to be running at least 12 or more groups. How did you grow the company?
Painfully and slowly. So, it's the 20-year overnight success, right? It's a very relational business, a lot of digital marketing, a lot of talking to people. It's not for everybody. So we have to sort of interview them to figure out, do they have the right level of humility, but yet performance orientation, learners? Those are kind of the profile. And, not all CEOs look like that. Some of them are arrogant. They think they have all the answers. And they're just not a good fit for a CEO peer group. So we do have to interview quite a few people to find the ones that really work and will stick in a group, because arguably, Seth, part of the product is the quality of the people you're going to be around the table with. And if you walk in and go, ugh, not so much, it's not going to work for you. If you walk in and go, woof, these are really capable people, I'm going to have to bring my A game to stay with them. That's the experience we want to generate. So we're very careful about who we're willing to work with. But big, I would say the biggest one for us is we are LinkedIn ninjas. We are very, very, very good at LinkedIn.
How do you mentioned the professional trained facilitator aspect as opposed to being, led by a member.
Yep.
How do you train? What's that process look like?
Well, interesting enough, a pretty significant proportion of our coaches are former members. So they are former CEOs. Almost all of our coaches are former CEOs. So they've done the job before, but they've also participated in our CEO peer groups before. So they know exactly how they run because they experienced it as a member. And so they can execute it as a facilitator. We also run them through a few days of training on the little subtlety that they may not have picked up as a member. But usually members are really, really effective coaches, because they can go, listen, here's the value I got out of it when I was running my company, and it's real. It's not a sales guy trying to pitch you on something. They genuinely experience the benefit. So that's been the strongest source of is clients who had a big liquidity event. I'm like, what are you going to do? Play golf all day? Come and coach some CEOs, and they're very happy to do it.
You've been at this a while. And obviously with that group growth rate, you've achieved a significant amount of success. What's your biggest challenge now?
Nobody has enough revenue, Seth. I'd love to get this business to 300 CEOs. I think it's a boutique. I don't think it's a 5,000 CEO group. That's not what it's designed to be, but 300 of really high quality CEOs would be awesome. So that's kind of the growth path we're on. We'll do that over the next few years probably. And then we'll see. I don't know if it scales to the next level. Does it go to 1,000? I'm not sure yet, but let me get to 300 and then we'll have a conversation about it. The big thing we're after, though, interesting enough, is our purpose is to positively impact 1 million lives. And we do that by influencing the quality of the decisions that the CEOs make. So the better the CEO is, the better the lives of the people working for that CEO are. And that means they can afford the F-150 pickup truck, and they can send their kid to college, and they can pay their mortgage, and the business is stable and growing. If we do a good job, that all happens, and we positively impact all of those people. And right now we have about 375,000 people that we're indirectly influencing through the business. So we take a lot of pride in that, and we're shooting for 1 million, which curiously enough, more or less correlates to 300 CEOs.
That is incredible. Your passion is obvious. What do you like best about what you're doing?
If you're a business geek, which I am, this is intellectual stimulation off the charts. You deal with the hardest problem of smart people every day of the week, and you can genuinely help them. And I just get off on that. I just totally get off on, as do all the people I work with. I mean, that's the perfect coach. I love to make a difference. I love to help people, and I'm a business geek. That's our bullseye client for us, or bullseye coach for us.
Who is an ideal member for you? Who's an ideal CEO?
We start around $25 million of revenue. As I said, almost any industry. There's a few we don't deal with, but let's for the second say all industries, anywhere in the US and Canada. Learner, humble, performer, growth oriented. We get that combination of the right size with those characteristics. There's a good chance that they're a quality member. A question we might ask in an interview would be, give me an example of something you learned in the last 6 months and applied to your business. And if they go, humana, I don't know, that's probably not a great. If they go, oh, there were actually 4 things I did. Okay, that's our person. That's our person.
And for our folks who are watching or listening who might be that person, where is the best place for us to send them to learn more?
Just go to our website, theceoproject.com. So it's theceoproject.com, or send me an email, jim@theceoproject.com, and we'd love to chat with you.
Well, we know your time is incredibly valuable. We greatly appreciate you spending some of it with us.
Thank you, Seth. This was a real pleasure. A lot of fun.
This is then Seth Greene for Sharkpreneur with Dr. Jim Schleckser of the CEO Project. Jim, thanks again for joining us.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everybody, for watching or listening. We will talk to you or see you next time.
Why do so many businesses struggle while others seem to explode overnight? Do you wish you had the secret to this type of exponential growth? Now, I've scaled more than 20 businesses to over $100 million, and it's not just luck. In my new book with Mark Tim, Mentor to Millions, you'll learn the repeatable framework I use in all my business ventures for massive success. Order at kevinmentor.com and get over $1,000 in bonuses. Head to kevinmentor.com.